Thank you for your interest in the Canada-Ontario Job Grant. This presentation will explain how you, as an employer, can strengthen the skills of your workforce for minimal financial input. Let's start with a look at the background. On March 28, 2014, Ontario signed the Canada-Ontario Job Fund Agreement with the federal government. Launched as a 6-year initiative, this training grant is a part of Canada's Economic Action Plan. The Canada-Ontario Job Grant, also known as the COJG, was created to provide training to Canadian employees in order to improve their employability and in-demand skill sets. The Canada-Ontario Job Grant provides an opportunity for employers to invest in their workforce with help from the government. It is available to small, medium, and large businesses with a plan to deliver short-term training to existing and new employees. It provides up to $10,000 in government support per person for training costs. It requires employers to contribute 1/3 of the total costs. There's additional flexibility for small businesses, those are businesses with 50 or less employees, to provide an in-kind contribution towards their share of the costs. And finally, it requires training to be delivered by an eligible third-party trainer. To be an eligible employer, an employer must contribute a minimum of 1/3 of eligible training costs in cash unless they are a small or medium employer. They must employ the individual selected for training, be licensed to operate in Ontario, be applying for training that is delivered in Ontario and is related to a job that is also located in Ontario. They must comply with the Occupational Health and Safety Act and the Employment Standards Act. They must maintain appropriate workplace safety and insurance board or private workplace safety insurance coverage. They must have adequate third-party general liability insurance as advised by its insurance broker and comply with all applicable federal and provincial human rights legislation, regulations, and any other relevant standards. To be an eligible employer, an employer must not be a federal, provincial, or municipal government and/or agency. They must not be a broader public sector organization as defined by the Broader Public Sector Accountability Act. They must not be a Canada-Ontario Job Grant service provider or be currently in receipt of other government funds related to the same skills training for the same individual. And finally, they must not use training participants to displace existing staff or replace staff who are on layoff. All people who are residents of Ontario and either a Canadian citizen, permanent resident, or protected person, and who meet these eligibility requirements are eligible to participate as an employee. Employed individuals must be identified by their employer. Unemployed individuals must also be sponsored by an employer, demonstrated through a permanent or conditional offer of employment. An individual must not be participating in full-time training or education or any other government training intervention that offers funding support for same tuition, books, or other training-related costs. Training must not exceed 1 year in duration and must be provided by one of the following third-party providers: colleges of applied arts and technology, publicly assisted universities, school boards, private trainers operating in compliance with the Private Career Colleges Act of 2005, union-based training centers, and product vendors. Now that you've had an overview of the Canada-Ontario Job Grant, let's look at some quick facts. The government provides up to $10,000 per person for training costs. Employers must contribute 1/3 of the total costs, with some additional flexibility for small businesses to provide in-kind contributions. Training must be less than 1 year and be delivered by an eligible third-party trainer. Employers are required to complete an application and submit it online in order for funding to be considered. In May 2015, changes were made to the Canada-Ontario Job Grant employer application assessments as a result of increased demand for government-funded training. Employers are now encouraged to focus on submitting training applications for new or better jobs. That includes retaining employees who have received a formal notice of layoff, training programs and courses that are over $500 and longer than 1 week, new initiatives, applications that have not been submitted in the last 6 months. For training requests involving 25 or less training participants, employers will submit the form to a COJG service provider that they select themselves. For training requests involving more than 25 training participants and applications submitted by consortia, forms will be submitted to ministry regional offices based on the location of training. At Accountapotamus, we train employees how to use QuickBooks. Not only are our courses extremely well designed and delivered, we also meet the approved criteria as a third-party trainer. If you are an employer whose needs include QuickBooks training for 1 or more employees, and you feel that the Canada-Ontario Job Grant is something that you would like to pursue, please connect with us by email training@accountapotamus.com or by phone 613-656-0441 extension 441. Best of luck on your journey to a stronger and better skilled workforce.